Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm comedian Preacher Moss. I hope you're having a blessed Ramadan. Listen, I just want to take a couple of minutes of your time to talk about Olive Branch Muslim Family Services. Olive Branch Muslim Family Services represents a lot in the city of Houston. You have a lot of relief organizations throughout the country, throughout the state, but I have to say Olive Branch Muslim Family Services is one for the home team of the city of Houston. Listen, let me tell you about myself. I've always lived this idea that I'm always going to have more blessings than I'm going to have problems. And in that space, I've been able to understand that the blessings sometimes mean I could be a blessing in somebody else's life, much the same with Olive Branch Muslim Family Services. Years ago, maybe 2 years ago, we had a video and it asked the profound question, imagine if it wasn't an olive branch. Not so much the organization, but the absence of compassion and mercy. Imagine if there wasn't an olive branch. Not so much a question, but a reminder of a prophetic tradition that all of our prophets who have come came to advocate for the poor and uplift the suffering. Imagine if there wasn't an olive branch. Thinking about that. OBMFS. I changed the letters from Olive Branch Muslim Family Services and dug a little deeper, thinking about that prophetic tradition. So Olive Branch Muslim Family Services is really Olive Branch's mission is family success. We need your help. While you're writing out that check, brothers and sisters, think about that. What's a world without compassion? What's good music without good instruments? What's a president that's distrustful and not honest? Okay, let me get back focused. In any event, imagine if there wasn't an olive branch. Let me remind you.
We just need help.
Imagine if there wasn't an olive branch. Muslim Family Services at your command. The people who help people have to say, we need your donations, don't delay. We all have struggles from time to time, but leaders dedicated is what you find. Before another person sheds a tear, support Olive Branch, you don't have to fear. Olive Branch Muslim Family Services. Action you can see, compassion you can feel. Sing it with me. Ooh. Ooh. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. Ramadan Mubarak. I'm Preacher Moss, comedian extraordinaire here on the ShOUT Show. I'm your host, man. I hope that everybody's having a blessed day. Our night of powers are rolling up. They're compiling up on us, and I'm really, really happy that I've been blessed, alhamdulillah, despite my allergies, to get back on my fasting. Inshallah, I have to make up a couple of days. But I'm not alone. A lot of people had some issues with allergies and illness, and it comes it comes around this time of year, particularly as Ramadan, gets closer and closer to spring. So I can think in the summer and I have, allergies, but, it keeps moving. And as it moves, it just calls for us to adjust accordingly. That's number one. I want to give a shout out to Sister Tana. She will not be with us today. She is partaking of, she does a lot of iftars. I would like to say in a very, very profound way, she's very, very just connected to, she's very connected to a community and service and things like that. And we're not the only ones that benefit from her presence. The Muslim Journal benefits it. Her masjid benefits. I mean, so many people pull on Sister Satana, and we just want to cheer you on and tell you that we really, really appreciate what you're doing. So much love for all of us here on the ShOUT Show. Now, today's show is a little bit different. I don't always say it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different because I need the show to be a little bit more focused, a little bit concentric, a little bit even more therapeutic, where I'm talking about us as human beings. I'm talking about us as our needs as we get older. In a changing society, what are we doing to protect our core values? What are we doing to, in some regards, I want to say, have foundational core values that we can pass on generationally? And on the other side, what can we contribute as individuals in a group to the society around us? The title is really about something I do with a lot of my clients. When I do executive coaching, I ask them a very, very critical question. It's like, who's your starting five in terms of your wellness? And it's not just your starting five in terms of your wellness. It's your starting five in terms of your welfare. As I've had some issues with healthcare issues, deaths in the family, I've looked at the starting fives of my family decrease, but at the same time shift. People took on different roles, and it should be that way. That we start thinking about that early. That we preempt a lot of stuff that's going to happen in terms of illness or tragedy or things like that, or just the way life folds out. It's really important, not so much to rehearse it, but to have a really firm understanding of people's roles. One of the things about family that has always been important, when family has disagreements, they have problems or dysfunctions because people don't know their roles. So when you have this thing, you have your COI, which we call the circle of influence, and I'll tell you a little bit about that when we come back. It's really important because you want to be able to establish precedents and roles and pathways for your family members. It's very, very important. So we're going to be right back here on the Shout Out Show. Don't you move. We appreciate you turning in. Appreciate you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To those who are just turning in, this is the Shout Out Show. We'll be right back. And we're back. So, as per usual, before we get started with our show today, appreciation for you starts with appreciation for me. So, I want to make sure I get some shout outs and love to everybody who's in the chat room, better known as the stars in the building, our shout out show family, our shout out show soldiers. So, I want to go ahead and bring them in right in. Sister Ree, what's going on, Sister Ree? Hope that you're feeling well. I'm doing better, but I find out, with these allergies, because they're a lot more intense this year, I think next allergy season, we have to start taking them before allergy season actually hits. You got to build up your resistance. That said, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you and family. Peace and blessings to Derek and your young lion, Juwan, brother Juwan. Hope he's doing well. Good to see you in the building. Next up, we got Mama San, who came in with her comment. She says, hello, SOS family. I might not be in the starting five for wellness, but I'm surely in the starting five for healing and thankfulness. Oh, I didn't say which starting five I had to be in, but it's nice to be in the starting five. Thank you so much, Mama San. We appreciate it. And of course, you're in the starting five for wellness. What are you talking about? Anybody here that has a starting five and they don't have a parent or a grandparent or auntie, uncle that's in that starting five, you better check your starting five. That's all I'm saying. I'm not here to criticize. Thank you so much for the comment. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brother JT, Johnny L. Thomas, my main man who has started his job on the way to getting that bag, that regular bag. I always joke about being a working stiff man, but I love you because you get out there and you hustle and you grind. Nobody does it better. Remember that. Nobody does it better. I've been watching you most of your life, sir. And a great conversation that we had this morning, just hanging out. Hey, yo, by the way, the Lakers won and the Bucks are on. For those who are interested in NBA basketball, the Lakers won and the Milwaukee Bucks are on playing against the Miami Heat. I'll be joining that game immediately after this show. So shout out my main man, All Talk for Sheep. We call him Mr. 6 o'clock, straight up, straight down. Our Canadian envoy to the show, coming all the way from Canada without a passport, not needing to even go to the border. Make sure the quality of the show is good on this side of the border and that side of the border. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brother. F1, man, I apologize for that stipend being late. And JT, I owe you a stipend. So we'll talk about that. I miss my brother, so I will handle that. But I will get you taken care of, inshallah. Man, I'm glad you got in. I hope that you're dialed in for a meal. We're still going to do, hopefully, inshallah, we're going to still do a little bit of our virtual iftar, get some people on here. I got to see Sister Ree. As long as you're feeling better, we want to get you on, Sister Ree. We appreciate it. And my main man, big brother Bilal Salahuddin, and not by default, his queen, Sister Sonia Salahuddin. How y'all doing, man? Thanks so much for joining the show. We had a great show when you guys came on, and as always, the technology part always falters a little bit with my side of the family, but we love it because it's organic, and it just gives us joy to see people in the place. So that's what we're gonna take that. So let me start with this thing. Many years ago, when I was working with professional athletes, getting into space, working with professional athletes and transition services. My big brother, may Allah be pleased with him, Reginald Kitchen, would work with promotional. He would work with professional athletes, particularly in basketball, and he had a list of questions that he would have for potential agents. That agents would come and court his clients, and he would have questions. It'd be a list of almost 60 questions. They asked pretty much all the questions to find out which agent was correct for the client. You know, you're dealing with young men, millions of dollars. It makes sense. You know, and he said one time that, preacher, we have to look at what our circle of influence is. A COI is your circle of influence. Now, here's the thing about your COI. Your COI can have a lot of people, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a starting five out of that COI. Meaning that we can have associates, we can have people who have functional importance to us, spiritual importance to us, emotional importance to us. But at the same time, there are people who are in another level, another league, another level stratosphere, if you will, who I'd say fundamentally affect and have concern for who you are as a person. You know, so my starting five, of course, has always been easy. My mom and dad, uh, JT Rick, my aunt. You know, these are starting five people who see me on a very much daily basis. Circle of influence included a lot of people, and they were just as important. But we're talking about functionality. Like when you have a problem, who do you pick up the phone and go, I need X, Y, and Z? When you pick up the phone, it's not like you have to reintroduce yourself. Your starting five fundamentally are people who are high performing because they have a very, very clear understanding of who you are, what your needs are, what your tendencies are, your good and bad tendencies, but they are people that can command the room when they are talking to you about you. Very important. Now, when we started talking about the starting five back then, it sounds like a basketball team, and we did keep it in the guise of a basketball team because when you watch basketball, everybody, not present day basketball, but let's say 10, 15 years ago, the importance of basketball then as opposed to now is that everybody had a position. Everybody had a position. So you had a point guard, you had a shooting guard, you had a small forward, power forward, you had a center. Everybody had a job. Let me give you an example. The point guard, he orchestrated the offense. You know, he put people in positions to be successful. The shooting guard, that's self-explanatory. He was the one that shot the ball. Small forward was the one that shot the ball, but also got rebounds. Power forward was the one who was on the block. The center was the one who was in the middle. He guarded the rim. He put up, you know, he was on the block. Your center was not shooting 3 points. Sorry, Jaren Jackson Jr., but your center was not shooting 3 pointers. They had very, very specific roles on that court during the course of the game. The Scopa family, the Scopa family gives you a very itinerant understanding of your starting five. You know, when you're young, your starting five is always going to be your mom and dad in some type of alignment. You know, some families are together, some families are not, but that's what it is. And what happens is in the starting five, when you're young, you watch people grow value in that space. So you begin to understand why your parents are so important, or your grandmother and grandfather are so important, or aunts and uncles are so important, brothers and sisters are so important, or you have valued them differently because in that space that you're looking for a particular type of performance, a particular type of output, they're not necessarily giving you that. So the question is, who's in your starting five? For example, who has the most wisdom in your starting five? Now, I frame wisdom two ways. Number one, wisdom of the world, and number two, wisdom of you. You see, because the person can look and say, I understand the wisdom of the world, but I understand the wisdom of you. You may not match up to what the world is giving you right now. You may not be on par with that, or on the flip side, you may be above it. There have been often times where I've had to resort and reach out to people who are in my starting five to say, am I tripping? Am I right about what I'm talking about? As a creative, I have a creative starting five. So I have a wellness starting five. I have a creative starting five. I have a group of artists that I will go and reach out to and ask them fundamentally about a project or a concept. What is your critique? What are the good points? What are the bad points? You begin to see what I'm talking about. Even at work, you will have, in some regards, a starting five. But your starting five at work is different because it's going to include people that affect your well being in terms of being an employee or an owner. Over and over, I think it's really important because the starting five for your wellness have so much to do, not so much with just your wellness, but how you replicate that space when you're dealing with people who include you in their starting five. Per se, when you move out of your first family and you start having a family, your family look at you and they will look at you and understand or ask the question, are you doing the utmost? Are you performing in your position as a father or a mother or brother or sister? These are things that we're not talking about enough. I was talking to a group of young guys and I asked them this whole thing. We sat and we talked about the whole aspect of starting fives. And it was interesting what they gave me. Because if you talk to them long enough, this scope of starting five was very, very fluid. When I mean fluid, it meant that they saw people in different positions because they had to move them out of position. Like one man said, my father will never be in my starting five. I said, why not? He said, well, I've never seen him. When I saw him, I wasn't impressed. I said, what do you mean impressed? He said, my father didn't take up the initiative to be a dad. That his presence wasn't something that brought a certain type of gravitas. Like when your father walks in a room, um, when my dad walked in the room, even though I was a grown man, I would sit up. I'm recognizing that he's walking in the room. I'm recognizing what he's done in that position. My mother would call. I could be on a call with Pope, the Pope, Jesus, da da da. I'm gonna be hold on, my mom called. Hold on, man. I'll call you back. Now it sounds funny, but that is the scope of a starting five. And I'm not putting it out there that, oh my gosh, my starting five has to take a bullet for me. No, no. They are the people that you listen to, so you're not putting yourself in a position where you have to take a bullet in the first place. Over and over, I've learned this. And I think the thing is really, really, really important. And you're blessed. Me as a comedian, I have starting fives all over the place. I have my sports starting five, I have my family starting five, I have my entrepreneurial starting five, I have my creative starting five. But what's important that all of them are relevant circles. As Brother Kitchen said, and I thought it was really, really interesting. One time we were going through a bit of a crisis with someone, and we had someone in our starting five who they weren't performing. The needs and requirements of that position, they weren't performing. It was really dragging down the group. And I remember Reggie said something to this member. He said, we love you, but let's get honest. You've gotten to a space where whatever trauma you've gone through, you brought to this crew, and it's two ways. He said, because the same as in you're not starting five, we're in your starting five, but you're not giving us the opportunity to contribute. Therefore, there's frustration on both sides. The old question they say a lot of times, you've heard this, you got two choices in life when things happen. You either get better or you get bitter. Well, this is a person that chose the latter, to get bitter, and it became a certain type of thing. And, the whole idea of a starting five is also, if we're talking about it in a spiritual narrative, if you will, your starting five is literally who you let in your heart, the people that are closest to your heart, the people that you allow in your orbit, and they know who you are, good, bad, in between. They know who you are. They love you. I don't want to say unconditionally. They love you, understanding who you are. Can't say unconditionally, because you need people in situations, and I say this all the time. That whole thing, unconditional. No, you need people to love you and understand the condition that it is. That somehow there's something incumbent on you to be accountable for what you do. So listen, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be back talking about this whole idea. And don't you guys move. Don't you move. Don't you move. Don't you move. In fact, if you guys don't mind, I want to put this up here because we've got some great news. And I hope you guys are going to listen. Got some great news. So I would like everybody on the Shout Out Show to be a part of the Love Allah More Challenge. And here's the deal. It's not all Muslim. It's not. Allah means God. So how can you love God more? I'd love to have everybody on. I'm going to tell you some good news behind it. We'll be right back. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Moss, comedian extraordinaire. Before we get started, let me say Ramadan Mubarak. In advance, I'm hoping that everybody has a successful fast. Now, brothers and sisters, I'm here today to talk about the Islamic City 30-day challenge to love Allah more. What does that mean, Preacher? It means that we're all going to talk about the different ways that we can love Allah more, that we can dedicate ourselves and devote ourselves to the Most High, and in this special time of the year, Ramadan, get closer to our Lord. Now, the way I'm going to love Allah more, brothers and sisters, is I'm going to focus on correctness. Self-correctness, emotional correctness, spiritual correctness. Because I believe in this way I get closer to my Lord because I'm a lot more humble and a lot more open to His mercy and His wisdom. This was a big thing for me when I became Muslim about self-correction, especially growing up in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, hearing all the noise about what I was supposed to be as a young black man, as a young black boy. And I found this calm, if you will. This calm that was passed down for me, from my relatives, my mom, my dad, all my relatives, it was that whole idea that we could self-correct ourselves. And I found this peace in the religion of Al-Islam. Now, you can't do what I'm going to do. I mean, don't copycat. Make your own video. I already said I'm going to love a lot more because I'm going to focus on self-correction. You have an opportunity to make your own video and talk about how you are going to love a lot more. That's right. So what are you standing there for? You got a limited amount of time. Ramadan is starting in like 15 minutes. I believe that you should get out and try to figure out how you're going to love a lot more. Make a video, 2-3 minutes. Join the challenge for Islamic City to love a lot more. I'm Preacher Moss. In advance, Ramadan Mubarak, and I'll be seeing you throughout this 30 days. Take care. Okay, so I'm glad everybody liked the video, and let me switch this card. I'm glad everybody liked the video. So here's the deal, and I'm very proud of this. You know, that was my campaign with Islamic City. We're going to be doing a national campaign, so we're moving from the 30 days, and we're probably going to make it a 6-month campaign. I'm very happy. The videos, I'll get you guys links to the videos, or show a couple more. You saw Imam Anwar's video, which is really, really good. I'm just really happy and really, really pleased that we can do this thing as a team. In fact, the whole idea of Love a Lot More really came from the Shout Out Show. It really came from the Shout Out Show. You talk about just people dedicated. They come, they see the show, we laugh. Sometimes life happens during the show, and we have to, get back on our horse and understand what that is. But to have a personal connection with the people on the show is alhamdulillah, 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 alhamdulillah. And Islamic City has decided to make this a bigger campaign, and I told them right out of the bat, I said the people I need to make videos and be a part of this campaign are the people on the Shout Out Show because you guys are the best. All right, enough for rubbing you guys and getting you guys all lathered up on that. Let's get back to what we're talking about. Who is in your starting five? Okay. People say, is there a quantitative way to figure out who should be in your starting five? Somebody said, what are the characteristics? Is there a rubric, so to speak, for your starting five? No, if you have a rubric, you're going to develop it yourself. Like my rubric for people who are in my starting five, reliability. And what I mean reliability is not that they are reliable to me. It's that when I have a situation, they have reliable behavior, right? So if I had a guy who always said, hey, listen, man, you can call me, don't call me for this, don't call me about lemons, call me for oranges. And I call him for lemons. He's like, I told you to call me for oranges. That's a reliable person because he keeps me in a very strict understanding of what he's available for. And that's a respect thing. That's one. Number two is not so much compassion towards me. I like to see compassion towards other people. The people who are mostly in my circle, if you will, part of my starting five are people who are they're other people's starting fives, meaning that they're in high demand, meaning that what I see in terms of personal characteristics, other people are seeing in terms of personal characteristics too. I don't want somebody in my starting five and it's the only starting five. I'm not saying they need references, but you should be able to see them in certain situations. And the other part is the third thing is I want people in my starting five to understand that I want to be accountable to you too. I want to do what I need to do to be in your starting five, or at least in your circle of influence, somewhere around the starting five. I know I'm not gonna crack the family top five or anything like that, but when you call me, understand that I'm around, and maybe we are concentrically in each other's circle of influence. The circles, Allah knows best on the starting five. Don't love me unconditionally. Don't love me unconditionally. When I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I need to be told when I'm wrong. I need to be told when I'm out of pocket, and I need to be open to it when it happens. I had a very good friend one time come up to me, and he said he said you ain't eating well. He said you look a little raggedy. Of course, it's my dad. But he said you look a little raggedy. He said this is not shaving. You ain't eating well. And I'm like, you know what? He was right. I thought I was eating well, but when your father says you're not, you're not. My mother always used to tell me, when I was speaking, oh, I used to hate this. I was speaking when I was coming up with ideas. I go, and she go, to remind me that I was doing the, But it was really important. I'm gonna tell you why. Because when you get into public speaking, it is annoying when somebody goes, yeah, nobody wants to hear that. You're a paid professional speaker. I owe that to her, and she would say it, and it would get on my nerves when I was a kid. But it helped me because nobody wants to see a comedian that looks like they don't have an idea what they want to talk about, or a public speaker, or a distinguished speaker. My point exactly. The other thing that I like in my starting five, you gotta have a sense of humor. Just a small piece of humor. Even in my circle of influence, all of us had the ability to have a sense of humor, but also the ability to laugh at one another. Even in difficult times, we had the ability to laugh at one another. My family starting five and my relatives starting five has the same characteristics that we've been laughing about some of the same things since I was a knee-high kid. And these are the things when I talk about a generational structure that carry. This is, and I don't want to get too deep, but, I always felt like the actual conspiracy against the black family in separating the black family was the fact that it contributed to not having a reliable starting five. Slavery is a story of slaves from Africa not being able to establish a starting five right off the bat. And that they put together hodgepodge families based upon the fact that we're all in this condition called slavery. Let's figure out how we can unify, galvanize, and whatever this family is going to be, we're going to make the best out of it. That's the challenge of the slave, but that's also the genius and the miracle of the slave. That even in that space, having a communal understanding coming back from Africa, they knew what it was to have a starting five. So I think that's fairly relative. So got about a minute or so. So let me wrap up about this whole idea. Your starting five. Who's on your starting five for wellness? When you choose people, don't ask them to love you unconditionally. It's impossible. They're going to be conditions. Ask them to love you, understanding that you need love. Ask them to love you to understanding that you need understanding, compassion, and understand. You're not going to unsee things or undo things in the part of this process of relationships. Be honest. Hey, be honest. If somebody doesn't smell right, tell them. Be honest. Somebody got a book on the end of their nose, tell them. Be honest. The part of being part of somebody's starting five for wellness is that you're not there to tell them things that they already know. You're there to tell them about information that's going to help expand their capacity and their abilities to do things in life and love and business and all those things. So the last thing, and I'll say this, be open. Be open with your starting five. And as a part of it, make sure your starting five reminds you to love yourself. All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. It's Preacher Mars. See you tomorrow, inshallah.